But first, president and founder of Eurasia Group and G0 Media, Ian Bremmer. Ian, always good to have you. First, your reaction to what the New York Times is reporting regarding an escalation.
Yeah, I mean, there are three options that I'm hearing from the White House that President Trump is considering right now. The first being 1 to 2 more weeks of the same basic strikes and see if that leads to a deal as pressure builds on the Iranians. The second is walking away and letting the Gulf states figure out what to do with a compromise with the Iranians. When Trump says, maybe I'll just do it without a deal, that's what he means. And then the third is heavier strikes using bunker buster bombs and some infrastructure targets with a list that's still under debate for 1 to 2 weeks. I think what's important to recognize out of these three options is even the third is quite restrained compared to the kinds of military operations that the Americans could in principle take. Destroying large amounts of energy infrastructure, for example, really trying to bring the Iranians to their knees. Another regime change effort operations, decapitation of the leadership as it exists today. Pickaxe Mountain going after the hardened, very deep underground nuclear facilities. I mean, the United States, despite all of the threats that we've seen from President Trump consistently for the past weeks and weeks, the recognition that all-out war will lead to unacceptable consequences for the global economy, for America's allies in the region, and for U.S. bases and troops on the ground in the region has been, I think, the most notable thing that's come away from what I've been monitoring from the White House in the course of this war.
Given that, I mean, is the only real option for him to walk away? I mean, bunker busting bombs or another round of strikes, are they actually going to put pressure on Iran in a way that will significantly matter?
No, it may not matter. But, I mean, punching ourselves in the face repeatedly, we are the world's strongest country. We can take it, even if it's coming from ourselves. I mean, we're not going to knock ourselves out here. The U.S. economy is suffering much less than other economies around the world. We see that. We see that in the role that the dollar continues to play as safe haven currency. So, I mean, I do think that the least worst option at this point, and it won't get us back to the status quo ante before the war started, the least bad option would be to stop. But Trump does not want, is not prepared to accept the loss of face that comes from essentially an admission, even if he'll never say it, that the Iranians are going to end up, at least for the short to medium term, with a lot of influence over what goes through the strait. And so absent that, he maintains the blockade. And absent that, he maintains, for the last 2 weeks at least, these strikes that are relatively limited, and they're mostly on military targets, and the Iranians can clearly take it. But that, if he wants to persist with that for another month or two, as long as the Americans continue to have the Tomahawk missiles and the like, he certainly can do that as the commander-in-chief.
But you're arguing that it's not going to make much of a difference. Have we lost
Correct.
this war unless we go full scale, which you say the White House has assessed and the risk is just too great? So have we lost?
Yeah, I mean, so we lost, let's put it this way. I wouldn't want to be in Iran's position. I heard what you said in the opening, that Iran's winning the war. I mean, their supreme leader was killed, over 100
I'm not saying they're
killed.
winning the war. My argument is they're in a, or not my argument, Chris Murphy's argument and other foreign policy arguments that are being made, and I know that you're going to have your own opinion, I want to hear it, is that they're in a stronger position than they were before, and we are in a weaker position.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you and I would not want to put ourselves in Iran's position today. The position of the regime economically is worse materially than it was before the war. Their position geopolitically in terms of influence over the strait, at least for the near to medium term, is stronger. I know that's not as exciting of a headline as what Chris Murphy had to say with you. I think it is closer to reality. But Trump is the problem we have here. This is very similar, Katie, to when Trump went after the Chinese. A weaker economy than the U.S. He hits them hard with all of these these tariffs, essentially a boycott. Then the Chinese hit back, and Trump goes, oh, my God, that really hurt. It's going to shut down the economy. I need to treat them with a lot more respect. I need to take the risk out of this. This is very similar. Trump beats them up really hard, kills the leaders with the Israelis, and takes all these shots at them. And now they hit back hard. But Trump does not yet appreciate that the Iranians have real leverage. He thinks if I continue to hit them, I'm angry at them. If I keep hitting them, they're going to back down. And as long as there is a real gap between President Trump's understanding of how much leverage the Iranians have and the Iranian understanding, and it doesn't matter if a lot of Trump's own advisors don't agree with him, they're not able or willing to get through to Trump in saying, sir, the emperor may not be as dressed as you think he is, right? I mean, that's why when you saw Trump come out last week and announce 20% tolls on everything going through the strait, and we all knew that wasn't plausible. I blame his advisors. Like, they should not allow the president to say something so patently untrue that he's going to have to walk back. It makes him look worse. It undermines his own leverage. They're not doing their jobs. He's not willing to let them do their jobs. But that's why it's harder to get to an end of the hostilities, even if those hostilities aren't doing anything for America's leverage and interest in the region and in the world. And it's because Trump just refuses to understand that the Iranian position is stronger than he had anticipated when he went to war with the Israelis against Iran.
So because of that, can he even just walk away? If the Iranians have control over the strait and they're going to send missiles to provoke people or charge a toll or block up the global economy at will, which they can now do, can the president just walk away and say this mess is for somebody else? I mean, is that feasible? We've got allies in the Middle East who want to make deals with, and they want to make deals with us. Is it possible for the U.S. just to throw up its hands and say, you know what, we're done, we're going to pull all of our troops back? Or do we suffer more consequences?
If I were advising the president, God love me, and he was actually listening to me, what I would say is he can and should do that, and that allow the Gulf states to create a compromise, essentially something that looks like the management of the Dardanelles, where the Omanis and the Iranians jointly manage some fund that is paid into by countries in the region, maybe some others, not the United States. Call it reconstruction, call it management. It's not going to be a per ship toll for now. And the reason you do that for now is because right now the Americans do not have the ability to defend either their allies in the region from Iranian strikes, Shahed drones, ballistic missiles, and do not have the ability to defend the strait from Iranian disruption. But the Iranian leverage in the region is wasting over time. Countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, they are building alternate infrastructure to avoid the strait. You need to get radar in place for the Gulf states. You need to get advanced Ukrainian drone capabilities that will shoot down Shaheds and eventually ballistic missiles. In 12 months' time, with that capacity, you can drive a much harder bargain against the Iranians or else. But the U.S. is not in that position today. And Trump's ego may not be willing to allow that recognition, but the United States should be keeping its powder dry until they can drive a better outcome for the American people, for their allies in the region, and for the global economy.